Joe Biden reveals his $5.8 trillion spending plan and tells you that it is fiscal responsibility. So we will talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Peace talks resume for Ukraine and Russia as Roman Abramovich gets himself back to Russia after apparently being poisoned. So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening there. Iran has struck an Iraqi target and ISIS is claiming responsibility. So we'll go over just a bit about what's going on there. And a CNN analyst blames Trump in the aftermath of the Will Smith-Chris Rock fight. And I'm not even kidding. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Ed Heads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We don't have as much to get to today as we have in the past. Like, we're not going to do yesterday's 60 fucking tab day, but I got a good 29 up here waiting for you, plus finance, and the announcements are coming up at the top of the show here. So we're going to get into it right away because, hey, we've got to get through it and talk about stuff, but I couldn't believe that. I was going to bed last night and I see on the top of the Daily Wire, Biden announces fiscal responsibility is $5.8 trillion spending package. I'm like, what? Man, if I spend 100% more money than I have, while I'm already deep into debt, you guys call me a loser. But with Biden, it's fiscal responsibility. I don't know. Maybe he hasn't cleaned his room. I don't know. And I figured I'd indulge Arvolt here today because when he got started, right before we were getting started, I saw that our friend Steven has come out and said that he now agrees with Jordan Peterson and, well, because he cleaned his room. He cleaned his room, now he agrees with Jordan on everything, and I need to remind you. I said, well, the problem is you've cleaned your room, and that's the first part here, but have you gone down into the belly of the whale? Get back to me when you've saved your father, and then we'll talk. Got to indulge our Volt for that one. But we got to get started. We got to get going into this because, hey, we could finish everything up today. So, definitely go in. But before we get started, I don't know, I just lost my place on the mind here. Before we get started, though, go check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. Once we get started, turnsofpagesproductions.com will be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We're sitting on a start page right now, but we are going aggressively into the month of April, getting started on fundraising, so that's going to be a fun time. There's going to be a name reveal coming up on the Brian Nichols show, so go and check that out. I actually have to go and talk to him about that and see what it is that we're going to talk about and when that's going to happen so I can get a definitive date for you guys. But definitely go and check that out. It's going to be a great time. We're set up, we're ready to go, and we're ready to start off with 7 great shows, one of which is going to be a surprise. But you're going to see these 2 great shows that are on this channel, plus the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, a new upcoming project with Britt and Sean Hickman and the Porch Boys. So go check all that out. It's going to be a wonderful time. These are awesome people that are going to go help this page get started. And I want to bring you guys a news experience where you are getting your news and your culture from people who have to make some of the same decisions you are, because that's where we're at. I want to meet some people where they're at and show you where it is that we can meet off of. So that's what we see off of that. Go check that out, turnsofpagesproductions.com. And if you guys want to be in the know before the name gets revealed, even though you guys have mostly already seen the name here, we are at giftsandgo.com/turnsofpages101 with the express announcement that we want to make sure that our friend Bobby Joe gets paid, because we like Bobby Joe around here, and she is going to be helping to make sure that the website gets developed properly, rather, and also to make sure that we don't get a crash, like in case somebody is at a historical event somewhere and gets 40,000 people looking at the website at the same time, like happened with the old website. So go and check that out. Great web developer, great friend of Liberty, Bobby Joe, and help us make sure that she gets paid. All right, let's look in at your finance for the morning here. Starting with the Dow. The Dow, again, cracked even just barely before the end, after spending almost the entire day down. There was a full drop up until noon local time, and then it started to climb back up and climb back out, possibly indicating some of the peace talks were stealing some of the investors here, so we see that. And yeah, just a 0.25% up by the end of the day, up 94.65 points to 34,955.89, looking at your Bitcoin. Bitcoin has also been on a steady rise throughout the day yesterday, up to $47,988 even per coin. That is up $997 and 30 US cents, or 2.12% throughout the day. Looking in at the scrap is still looking very, very good right now. So, I mean, if you guys are looking to do some spring cleanup here, it looks like all the metal yards are looking for more scrap, and you might turn out with, well, you're not going to get rich off of it, but a couple extra bucks to go out and buy a video game or some extra soda or put some gas in the car or something. Something so you can do something nice for yourself here. If you have some metal around here, copper is on the rise, steel is on the rise, aluminum is on the rise on your individual plays. All copper plays are in the green, including brass and brass shells. All steel plays are in the green, including light iron, cast iron, and stainless steel. All aluminum plays are in the green, including aluminum copper pin radiator. Looking at some individual plays, electric motors are up, ballasts are up, lead is up, car and truck batteries are up. Catalytic converter market is where we're seeing some downswing, with large foreign cat, regular domestic cat, and large GM cat and small GM cat all down, but a small foreign cat is still on the rise. Compressors are up, alternators are up, carbide is up, hard drives are up, motherboards are up, but power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC tower are down. So that's where we're coming in with your scrap metal prices there. Let's see what IBD has to say. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures rally as Russia-Ukraine hold ceasefire talks. Apple, Tesla, I buy points. This is from Scott Latonin. Dow futures were early higher Tuesday as Russia and Ukraine hold ceasefire talks in Turkey. Treasury yields continue their recent rise, while U.S. oil prices look to rebound from Monday's dive. Dow Jones tech titan Apple and Tesla are rapidly approaching buy points. Amid a strengthening stock market uptrend, investors have the green light to continually raise exposure by buying top stocks, breaking out past proper buy points. You can find stock ideas by monitoring IBD's proprietary watch list like the IBD 50 and the IBD Big Cap 20. Among the Dow leaders, Apple rallied 0.3% Tuesday morning, and Microsoft inched higher in today's stock market. United Health, a Dow Jones stock to watch, remains in buy range after a recent breakout. Electric vehicle leader Tesla climbed around 2% pre-market Tuesday in the wake of Monday's surge after the company announced plans to split its stock. Amid the volatile, headline-driven market, IBD leaderboard stock Arista Networks, Broadcom, CVS Health, European Wax Center, and Regeneron Pharmaceuticals are Tuesday's top stocks to buy and watch. Microsoft and Tesla are IBD leaderboard stocks. Arista is an IBD swing trader stock. Apple was featured in this week's Stocks Near Buy Zone column. European Wax Center is last week's IPO stock of the week. So that's what we see off of that on the futures. Before Tuesday's open, Dow futures rose 0.3% versus fair value, while S&P 500 futures also gained 0.3%. NASDAQ futures were up 0.2% versus fair value. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. The 10-year Treasury yield ticked higher to 2.5% Tuesday, holding at its highest level since May of 2019. U.S. oil prices climbed back more than 1% Tuesday, looking to rebound from Monday's dive. West Texas Intermediate crude traded above $107 a barrel. I love how IBD keeps telling you that, well, West Texas trading above $107 a barrel, that's a good thing for West Texas. Yeah, but it fucking blows balls for the rest of us. Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks being held in Istanbul started Tuesday morning. Previous talks between the Russian and Ukrainian foreign ministers ended with no agreements on a ceasefire or other humanitarian issues. And of course, because Scott didn't put it in his article here, do remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. I want to grab one from Market Watch here. This is an op-ed, but this is A little bit of analysis onto what the markets have been doing for the last few weeks and what to do with that. So I wanted to talk just a bit about that rather than just straight facts and figures right now. So off of this is from Mark Hulbert. The Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ have now suffered a death cross. Here's why this could resurrect them. Reports of the U.S. stock market's death appear to be greatly exaggerated. No, it's never going to die. There are going to be enough people with money who want to go put money out into companies and see if they can get a reward off of it. The stock market is never going to die. It might sink a little bit, especially if Hong Kong, the news is telling people that they need to sell because of a deadly virus that's coming up here. And let's not look at anything else here on the past 3 years. I'm referring to the dreaded death cross that has now appeared in the price charts of 3 major U.S. stock market averages. A death cross occurs when an index's 50-day moving average drops below its 200-day moving average. The S&P is the most recent major average to succumb. In mid-March, the death cross showed up in the chart of Dow Jones Industrial Average in early March for the NASDAQ Composite Index in mid-February. It's not clear that the death cross, in fact, is the kiss of death. In many cases, historically, the stock market performed better after registering a death cross than it did the rest of the time. The last time all 3 of these averages endured this technical pattern was in March of 2020, just as the pinko-pox pandemic tanked the U.S. economy, far from presaging a significant drop in the market. That month's death crosses came within days of the launch of one of the most powerful bull markets in history. That's just one data point. Of course, there are many reasons why one could argue that March of 2020 was an exception, but in this case, it's more the rule. Consider what I found upon analyzing the death crosses in the U.S. market since 1990. I chose that starting date because in the early 90s, when it first became possible to easily trade in and out of the entire stock market with a single transaction while also incurring minimum transaction costs, the SPDR S&P 500 ETF, for example, began trading in January of 1993. The chart above reports the results for a total return index of all publicly traded U.S. stocks. As you can see, this indices averages 1 month return. Subsequent to a death cross was no different than on all of the days, but over the 3, 6, and 12 months period, subsequent to death crosses, this index did significantly better than at other times. And what he's coming out here with is somewhat true. One of the things to watch, unless there is a major crash, like the meltdown we saw during the Great Recession, one of the things to watch out, to go with when we see things like this, is the fact that people are going to start buying up at the bottom of the barrel, including some of our rich friends over in the investing class, the hedge fund guys like that. They're going to try to buy some of the stuff down at the bottom, hoping that once this comes back and rebounds, they make a fortune off of this. It's as simple as what we saw in Schoolhouse Rock in the 70s. Buy low, sell high. Get your piece of the pie. So once this gets low, especially with people who have fuck you money, they're going to start throwing stuff into some of the low, especially stuff that's like big, like Google, which is going to be around for a little while longer. It's not going to be around forever. It's eventually going to get eclipsed and be taken over. But something that's going to be around for at least a little while, like Google, if everything does drop back off, the people who still have fuck you money, while the rest of us are struggling to get a can of Spam, are going to go out and buy that stuff and sync it back up. Hopefully, again, trying to push themselves out and trying to get people with their 401ks, with their IRAs, to go back and buy into this as well and boost the price up and, boost the rich people back up. This is how Nancy Pelosi got rich. So, something to watch for, something to see up on the markets here. But as we're talking about fiscal responsibility, let's look in and see what's coming up out of Washington, D.C. So, starting today with The Hill. Biden unveils a $5.8 trillion budget proposal with tax hikes, spending boosts from Morgan Chalfant and Ars Folly. President Biden on Monday unveiled the ambitious proposals to reduce the nation's deficit over the next decade, with tax hikes targeting the wealthy while outlining boosts for military and domestic programs as part of a $5.8 trillion plan to fund the government for fiscal 2023. The White House says that fiscal 2023 budget, which includes a tax hike on billionaires and other reforms, would reduce the deficit by over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. Okay, you've got my attention. You want to spend more money than any other budget in history, but you think it'll reduce the deficit by $1 trillion. Okay, okay. Let's be completely fair to the House Plant in Chief, and let's hear what he has to say. Is this him talking about it? Just out of curiosity. Let's listen. I don't think so. I think this is Russia stuff. Yeah, it's Russia stuff. Never mind. Budgets are statements of value. And the budgets I'm releasing today sends a clear message that we value fiscal responsibility, safety, and security at home and around the world. And the investments needed to continue our equitable growth and build a better America, Biden said in a statement on the budget's release. That's funny. It almost seems like your focus groups have told you that Build Back Better is a poison pill and to call it something else at this point. Notably, the sweeping request avoids a specific funding request for Biden's signature domestic policy proposal, Build Back Bullshit, and instead includes a deficit-neutral reserve fund as a placeholder for future agreement between the admin and Congress. Because those discussions with Congress are ongoing, the budget does not include specific line items for investments associated with that future legislation. Office of Management and Budget Director Shalonda Young told reporters on a call Monday morning, previewing the president's request. So, back up. On top of going into a $5.8 trillion budget, under inflationary spending, they still want to add $1.75 trillion back on top of that, bringing the grand total to $7.55 trillion. Read it again. So on top of going out and wanting to spend $5.8 trillion on your wish list, on your budget proposal, your funding of the government, you still want to leave room to add $1.75 trillion on that, bringing the grand total to $7.55 trillion of spending through 2023. Are you fucking kidding me? The budget also does not include measures to offset the costs of any future Build Back Better legislation. Young said the budget incorporates the reserve fund and lays out Biden's three principles for an agreement: that it slash costs for families, expand the economy's productive capacity, and reduce the deficit. That means they're raising your taxes, by the way. Or your cost at the cash register. Negotiations over Biden's domestic proposal collapsed last December when Manchin said that he could not support the House-passed measure. The White House has been quiet about the status of negotiations with Congress since, and it's unclear whether renewed efforts to get scaled-back packages passed will be successful. Asked about the status of the talks, Young on Monday declined to get ahead of the negotiations on Capitol Hill. The deficit-neutral reserve fund is meant to leave the space, the revenue specifically, to allow congressional negotiators the room to do what President Biden has asked. Presidential budgets are typically not passed by Congress, but they serve as a signal of the admin's priorities for the coming fiscal year. Yeah, and you know what the worst part of this is? This is a $5.8 trillion budget. All these omnibuses, all the omnibus packages that we keep seeing over and over, are usually 10 to 15% higher than what we get out of the budget, the proposed budget. Typically, that's the average number. Sometimes it's as low as 5%, sometimes it's a little bit lower, actually. But typically, on average, we get out to 10 to 15% higher than what the proposed budget was. So let's put some number on that, shall we? Hang on. And we'll leave the build back bullshit out there. So 5. That's 5,800. 5.8 million. 5.8 billion. 5.8 trillion times 1.15. That means if we go onto the trends, onto the average lines, the omnibus that comes back out of this could be as much as $6.67 trillion. Again, could also be slightly lower. But it could be that much. That's your fiscal responsibility right there. Biden's budget puts a strong emphasis on bolstering international and domestic security, calling for $773 billion in defense spending. Because, of course, and by the way, if a Bush would have suggested, or a Romney, or even a Trump would have suggested $773 billion in defense spending, you would have every leftoid on Twitter coming out here and showing you how bad it is and how much Republicans love to spend money. And everything would be on there. Would be showing the $560 billion that are spent on defense spending. I know, because I've seen their charts over and over again. But hey, it's okay because Biden's doing it. According to White House fact sheet, it includes almost $1 billion in additional assistance for Ukraine. Because why wouldn't it, as the country battles the ongoing Russian invasion, as well as $6.9 billion for the European Defense Initiative, NATO, and countering Russian aggression. The budget also includes robust funding for domestic law enforcement programs. Yeah, that's going to go over well with the leftoids. Defund the police! Okay. We're going to give them $30 billion for state and local law enforcement, crime prevention, and community violence intervention programs, and $1.7 billion for the Justice Department Firearm Trafficking Strike Force. That's your gun registry. Biden has showcased his support for law enforcement as he seeks to counter Republican efforts to paint Democrats as soft on crime. Well, gee. I wonder... Whoa. Actually, no. Back that up just a second. You're telling me that the author of the 1993 crime bill is now going to come out and, in his budget, include proposals to do the 2022, well, it would be 2023 crime bill. 30 years later, they're going to get harder on crime, not softer on crime. They're going to refund the police. It's almost as if the people, our friends on the left who yelled defund the police for so long, elected a person who, as I mentioned before, wrote the 1994 crime bill, and a vicious prosecutor who chose to enforce it. Weird how that works. Additionally, the proposal funds other admin priorities like bolstering public health infrastructure and the Pinkopox pandemic and fighting climate change. It would give $81.7 billion to the Department of Health and Human Services over 5 years to prepare for future pandemics and provide $9.9 billion for the CDC and to public health infrastructure and strengthen the workforce. Biden proposes $3.3 billion to support clean energy projects and $18 billion for climate resilience programs. That's your pork barrel spending. That's going to go out to their big business buddies to help, shut down their smaller competitors who can't afford to keep up with the climate change regulations. The focus on deficit reduction seemed to be an effort to appease the moderates and address domestic economic concerns exacerbated by high inflation. Biden is proposing a minimum 20% tax on American households worth more than $1 million that would target their full income, including standard taxable income, as well as unrealized income like gains from stocks, which is already hit by capital gains taxes, as part of the plan to reduce the deficit over time. So they're going to double tax your capital gains. The budget also includes a corporate tax rate hike from 21% to 28%, which could prove a tough sell in the Senate given previous resistance from Manchin and Sinema. The push comes as top Democrats have continued to press for tax reform, targeting wealthy Americans and corporations, as government data has underscored growing income inequality in the nation in recent years, including during the pandemic. Well, again, as we mentioned last night when we were talking about some of the stuff and the new billionaire tax that's coming back out of this, supposedly, your Bezoses, the head of GE, your Musks, they don't have a huge amount. I think actually Musk does pay himself a very, very healthy salary. I think he's the exception to the rule, but for the most part, these people don't get a huge salary. Some of them don't take a salary at all. They get all their money off of capital gains, which they pay dearly on for taxes, for asset transfers and purchases. So this whole raising the minimum tax rate to 20%, that's not going to do a goddamn thing. But Democrats will have their work cut out for them, notching the necessary backing from Republicans who have voiced opposition to similar proposals, potentially forecasting problems ahead in the 50-50 split Senate, where the party would need all support of its seats and 10 GOP lawmakers to pass such a measure. And also, keep in mind that you have one senator out because he just had a motherfucking stroke. So that's what the leftoids have to say about this. Let's see what some of the other sides are talking about with this. From CNN, Biden admin proposes larger defense budget to counter China and Russia. From Orrin Lieberman, Ellie Kaufman, and Jeremy Herb. And once again, the people who supported Biden 5 years ago would have been saying, whoa, Republicans, they don't care about spending. Because they'll sit back and they'll spend all this money left and right for defense. They'll just go back. They love to spend. They talk about fiscal responsibility and then they spend all this money in the military. I hear you. I do. I'm against that too, oddly enough. I want all the military spending to just go the fuck away. Defend our borders, and behind every blade of grass, over here. President Biden's proposed fiscal year 2023 Pentagon budget includes $813 billion in spending for national defense, a 4% increase of $31 billion from the spending package signed into law earlier this month. That's even higher than what the Hill said, because the Hill said, what, $773 billion? Yeah, $773 billion. So now they're up to $813 billion. The Biden admin's defense budget remains focused on China as the primary strategic challenge, with an emphasis on strengthening European security in light of the threat posed by Russian invasion of Ukraine. If you look across the board at their capability, their economy, China remains our most challenging strategic threat, and that's what the strategy says. That's what the budget says, senior defense official told reporters ahead of the budget release. The Biden admin's proposal includes $773 billion in funding specifically for the Pentagon in the coming year. Congress, which will ultimately set spending levels for the federal government, is likely to boost that figure higher, just as it did in the fiscal year 2022 spending package. Republicans quickly responded to the Pentagon's budget roll-up by arguing that it wasn't enough for the U.S. military in the face of Russia's attack on Ukraine, because of course it isn't, because, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, Liberal Democrats, however, criticized the Biden admin for ramping up the defense budget at all. Oh, and me. Me who thinks taxation is theft. I also criticize that. While the 23 budget proposal was crafted before Russia invaded Ukraine last month, the Biden admin's defense budget recognizes the acute threat posed by Russia. Defense Department budget documents say Russia is pursuing a political, economic, and military strategy that seeks to fracture NATO, the Pentagon said. Well, that's why they installed Trump, to weaken NATO, to destroy NATO. The defense budget includes $6.9 billion in funding for a European deterrence initiative intended to counter Russian aggression and support Ukraine, funding that the White House touted in a fact sheet rolling out the entire federal budget proposal on Monday. In the fiscal year 2022 spending bill approved last month, Congress passed a $13.6 billion supplemental funding bill to provide security assistance to Ukraine and help resupply Ukrainians with weapons. It's virtually impossible to estimate how long the war between Russia and Ukraine will last, making it incredibly difficult to know whether the U.S. will provide more security assistance to Kiev. The U.S. has added thousands of troops in Eastern Europe on temporary deployments to bolster NATO's eastern flank. So, there it is. There's your military spending package, part of this. Let's see what the Daily Wire has to say. Is there video? There's not video. Which is lame because I love seeing this moron give a speech. Biden says fiscal responsibility is one of the values of his enormous $5.8 trillion budget proposal. There it is. And that's the title card for what we're watching here today. Fiscal responsibility. To spend $5.8 trillion. That's fiscal responsibility. From John Rigolizzo. President Biden unveiled his budget plan for fiscal year 2023 on Monday, claiming that the $5.8 trillion proposal would slash the federal deficit and build a better America. Budgets are statements of values, and the budget I'm releasing today sends a clear message that we value fiscal responsibility, safety, and security at home and around the world, and the investments needed to continue our equitable growth and build a better America, Biden said in a statement on Monday announcing the plan. In the statement, Biden claimed the admin was on track to reduce the federal deficit by more than $1.3 trillion this year, cutting in half the deficit from last year of the previous admin, and delivering the largest one-year reduction in the deficit in U.S. history. Because, of course, he can't make a proposal right now, with his numbers tanking, without saying, hey, look, that's what the last guy did. Look, don't you guys hate Trump? I don't care that inflation is in the tank and the national debt is going up. Look what the last guy did. Biden added that his budget proposal would continue that progress by reducing the deficit further and supporting economic growth while ensuring that billionaires and large corporations pay their fair share. At the same time, my budget will make investments on securing our nation and building a better America, Biden continued. We will continue our communities by putting more police on the street to engage in accountable community policing, hiring the agents needed to fight gun crime, and investing in crime prevention and community violence intervention. Biden also claimed that the proposal makes the investments needed to reduce costs for families, including investments to cut the cost of childcare and healthcare. And by cut the cost, he means government subsidize it so the cost actually goes up, because once the government is funding it, these people can charge whatever the fuck that they want. And the government's just going to pay for it. End cancer as we know it, support our veterans, and get all Americans mental health services that they need. $813 billion in defense, we read about that. $13 billion in federal funding to state and local law enforcement, we read about that. $1.7 billion for your gun registry. $81.7 billion to the CDC. $9.9 billion to prepare for future pandemics. $3.3 billion for clean energy. $18 billion for climate resilience. Pork barrel spending. The bill also contains a reported billionaire minimum income tax, establishing a 20% minimum tax on households worth over $1 million, including both wages and other income like unrealized gains. It also includes an increase in the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. Which I like the fact that they come back out and say, oh, it's for unrealized gains. Which, as far as I understand it, and I would have to look this up to know for sure, but as far as I understand unrealized gains, that is where your stocks, your bonds, your hard assets, your homes, and everything else goes up in value, but you don't cash out on it. Like, your middle-class house. That was worth $115,000 last year, and now it's worth $250,000. That's an unrealized gain. See, they tell you this is only going to go back and hit the major investors, donors, and whatnot. But your middle class house goes up in value too. Just so you know. Biden has previously presented himself as a champion of fiscal responsibility, claiming that his budgets have reduced the federal budget deficit. Last year, we reduced the deficit by $360 billion, Biden told House Democrats at the 2022 Issues Conference earlier this month. Well, what else was happening last year? All of your paycheck protections were expiring. Enhanced unemployment was expiring. And you only did one major stimulus. Not the 3 that you had proposed and not the 2 that had happened in the year before that. Gee, I wonder why the deficit went down. So, that's what we have to say on the budget. There's a lot of stuff moving here. There's a lot of lies that are in this. Straight out. But, that's what's coming out of the government. Let's grab one from Fox Business. 57% of American households paid no income tax last year, study shows. From Megan Henney. Oh, oddly enough, households that pay no federal income tax expected to plunge next year. Wow, that's weird. It's almost like the government needs more money. And you are going to see a tax hike on the middle class. More than half of U.S. households paid no federal income taxes in 2021, a temporary spike attributed to massive COVID-19 relief spending in form of tax credits and stimulus payments. A recent analysis from the nonpartisan Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center estimated that 57% of Americans paid no taxes last year. While that's down slightly from last year's 60%, it marks a significant increase from the 44% recorded before the pandemic began. The number of households who paid no income tax last year was truly eye-popping, Tax Policy Center for Senior Fellow Howard Gleckman wrote, but keep in mind, it was only temporary. The increase stems from the pandemic-driven surge into the government spending, including 3 stimulus checks, expanded federal unemployment aid, and the expanded child tax credit. Because that stimulus was designed as a refundable tax credit, they significantly reduced the tax liability in both 2020 and 2021, the analysis said, and in some cases the checks flipped some households from paying no income tax from paying income tax to not doing so. Essentially, no household making less than $28,000 paid federal income tax last year, nor will a majority, about 75% of those making between $28,000 and $55,000 among middle-income households, about 43% paid no federal income tax. Still, while many households do not pay federal income tax, most Americans still owed payroll or state income taxes. The study showed that about 4 out of 5 individuals paid at least one of these taxes. Nearly everyone paid the government in another form, whether through state and local sales taxes, excise taxes, property taxes, or state income taxes. Well, yeah, taxation comes for us all, unfortunately. It is theft, but it comes for us all. But yes, now those taxes are going back up on the middle class. Aren't you excited? From the Blaze. Biden admin invents Securities and Environment Commission out of air to force climate agenda on U.S. businesses. From Phil Shiver. Is there a video off of this? I gotta get up for just half a second. But I want to throw some video up while I do so. But there isn't one here. The Securities and Exchange Commission, a government agency established in the aftermath of the 29 stock market crash to protect investors and maintain fair markets, may soon become a key player in the imposing President Biden's climate agenda. In a 3-1 vote last week, unelected Democrat bureaucrats who serve as the agency's commissioners voted without authorization from Congress to impose sweeping new rules that require all publicly traded companies to disclose how their business affects climate change. According to a press release issued by the SEC, the proposed rule would require any business to disclose their greenhouse gas emissions, along with any and all relevant information to climate-related risks that are reasonably likely to have a material impact on their businesses, results of operations, or financial condition. In a lengthy statement of dissent, the SEC's lone Republican Commissioner, Hester Pierce, quipped that with the move, the agency essentially reinvented itself as the Securities and Environment Commission without any say from the American people. Pierce emphatically argued that the new rules will hamstring businesses with unnecessary and burdensome regulations that will ultimately harm investors in the economy. And besides that, she asserted, the SEC has no authority to enact such rules, seeing as Congress never gave the agency such broad power. Congress gave us an important mission, protecting investors, facilitating capital information, and fostering fair, orderly, and efficient markets, and granted us sufficient regulatory authority to achieve that mission, she wrote. This proposal steps outside of our statutory limits by using the disclosure framework to achieve objectives that are not ours to pursue. So, I have a couple things to say about this. I have a lot of things to say about a lot of things, but I have a couple things to say about this. First and foremost, this is actually the proposal that I suggested for the climate change. I suggested that there only be one environmental law in this country. Total. Period. Full stop. That companies have to disclose their disposal procedures, their emissions procedures, and how they intend to clean them back up. And what they're going to do that. They have to expose all of that. And there are no other laws. And then the free market comes back and decides, okay, is it important for me to get cheap shit? Or is it important for me to come back out and actually save the environment? Excuse me. And a lot of these people out there, these businesses out there, that if they do that, they're going to lose a butt ton of money. If the people actually decide. Because there are a lot of people who care about the environment and won't go and shop at businesses that pollute like this. A lot of them will go under once they come back and see just how bad the pollution is. And no, you're not allowed to pay somebody off to look the other way for the inspector or anything else. It's just you have to disclose how your disposal is. And if you get caught not exposing that or falsifying records, you lose your business license. Full stop. That's it. No more. And let the people decide. That is essentially what this is doing. But of course, on top of that, having all of the other burdensome EPA regulations, and as was pointed out by Hector, this isn't going from Congress. This is going on executive fiat. Anything that you do that affects the American people should have representation from the American people. And full stop, this does not. Plus all the other burdensome regulations that go along with that. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's going on over in Ukraine. Starting here from CNBC, Turkey's Erdogan opens latest Russia-Ukraine talks. Moscow said to be resetting its forces. Excuse me. So this is from Chloe Taylor. This is a live update, a live blog, of course. So I archived it at the point that we're looking at it here. Face-to-face talks between Russia and Ukraine delegates. Excuse me, are continuing in Istanbul today. I can't believe we went the entire 3 hours without having any allergy flare-ups whatsoever. Yesterday, no allergy flare-ups at all, and today it's just like, back to it. Ukrainian officials are hoping to secure a resolution to the humanitarian crisis unfolding in their country, as well as a ceasefire agreement. Meanwhile, the UK has said that Russian troops will still pose a significant threat to Kiev, and noted that Moscow is currently reorganizing and resetting its forces. Ukraine's airline flights are still suspended, probably a good idea. Ukrainian troops battle Russian forces in Zaporizhzhia region, which is the region that had the nuclear reactor. And that's some of what we're seeing here. Alright, let's grab one from the Hill. Is that Zelensky and Putin in the same room, or is that photoshopped? Ukraine and Russia to hold first face-to-face talks in 2 weeks. From Cameron Jenkins. Representatives from Ukraine and Russia held their first face-to-face talks in 2 weeks concerning the conflict between both countries, possibly signaling the progress towards ending the war. Negotiators from both sides met in Istanbul to discuss a possible ceasefire as well as Ukraine's security guarantees, according to the Associated Press. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan reportedly told attendees that they had a historic responsibility to bring an end to the fighting. "We believe that there will be no losers in peace," he said, according to the AP. "Prolonging the conflict is not in anybody's interest." Delegations from each country were seated opposite sides of a long table during the talks, the news service noted. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba shared what he hoped to gain from the talks, saying, "We are not threatening people, land or sovereignty," Reuters reported. "The minimum program will be humanitarian questions, and the maximum program is reaching agreement of ceasefire," he reportedly added in the address on national television. So, and that's, when this all started here, that's when the stock market had started to claw its way back, because one of the things to see, and really honestly, one of the things that I think that the stock market is anticipating, is once this is all over, we just forget about the sanctions on Russia and, open it back up for trade and open it back up for oil. Both benefiting the markets in Europe, where a lot of these people still trade, and benefiting the markets here, as we can get more Russian oil here and bring the gas back down to the low threes instead of the high threes. Will this work? I don't know. The last 5 haven't worked yet, so we shall see. Let me get a refresh on this here. So this is some of the talks that are going on here. Let's have a quick listen to that, and I will step away for just a second.
Adil bir barışın kaybedeni olmayacağına inan. Adil bir barışın kaybedeni olmayacağına inan. Adil bir barışın kaybedeni olmayacağına inan olmasını diliyorum. Liderlerinizin talimatları doğrultusu olmasını diliyorum. Liderlerinizin talimatları doğrultusu diliyorum. Liderlerin
That sounds like some sort of clickbaity thing that's going to be on the New York Post. But with the little bit of foreign language here, let's have a quick talk of what's happened here. So, Russia pledges to drastically reduce fighting around Kiev during the latest peace talks, from Yaron Steinbuch. Russia promised Tuesday to radically reduce its military activity around the Ukrainian capital of Kiev and a northern city as Ukraine proposed neutral status with guarantees to protect it from attack. Given that the talks on the preparation of an agreement on the neutrality of and non-nuclear status of Ukraine have moved into a practical field, a decision has been made to radically, by several times, reduce the military activity in the areas of Kiev and Chernihiv, Deputy Defense Minister Alexander Fomin said. He said that the move was meant to increase trust in talks aimed at ending the fighting, as negotiators met again after several failed rounds of discussions. Chief negotiator Vladimir Medinsky said that there had been a meaningful discussion at the talks that the Ukrainian proposals would be forwarded to the Russian strongman Vladimir Putin. So, and this is some of the stuff that's going on here. Those are the talks right there, with Erdogan in here leading everything that goes along with this. Some of the howitzers going off. Some of the people hiding in the subway. And again, some of the devastation of what's going on in here. I don't begrudge what happened to the Ukrainian citizens as far as what's happening with the governments. Again, I don't entirely know what's happening with that. I can ask 25 different people and get 25 different stories on what's happening and what's caused this conflict between both Russia and the Ukraine. It's really hard to know who's right when you can get 25 completely different stories by asking 25 people the same exact question. But these people who just wanted to carve out a life and had their lawns fucking blown off because of it, at least have the ability to get out with a gun and say, "Get off my fucking lawn." I would think that should be a God-given right, but hey, maybe I'm wrong on that. The proposals would include a 15-year consultation period on the status of Russia annexed Crimea and could come into force only in the event of a complete ceasefire. Ukrainian officials told reporters in Turkey. Ukraine's proposals were the most detailed and concrete that Kiev has announced publicly since Russia launched its invasion on February 24th. If we manage to consolidate these key provisions, and for us, this is most fundamental, then Ukraine will be in position to actually fix its current status as non-bloc and non-nuclear state in form of permanent neutrality, Ukrainian negotiator Alexander Chali said. We will not host foreign military bases on territory, as well as deploy military contingents on our territory, and we will not enter into military political alliances, he said, adding that the military exercises would take place with the consent of the guarantor countries. The Ukrainian officials said there was enough material in the proposals to warrant a meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and Putin. So, do you think Zelensky gets captured when they go back to try to do that? Also, it appears that this particular tank has the check engine light on the outside, in fact. Before the latest talks, Zelensky said his country was prepared to declare its neutrality, as Moscow has demanded, and was open to compromise over the contested eastern region of Donbass. Which raises the question, and we talked about this a bit last night and a bit yesterday. Are we going to be in a position where we see a Ukraine and an Eastern Ukraine? Just like we see with North and South Korea. West Ukraine and East Ukraine. West Germany and East Germany. So that's some of the stuff that's going on here. And of course, now the New York Post is going to try to give you the propaganda of just, look how bad these citizens were. Look at what Russia has done to these people. How evil are they? Well, again, I've got a lot of questions about what went on here and not a lot of answers. So that's what we see from that. From CNBC. The invasion of Ukraine has serious unintended consequences for Russia. Here are just 5 of them. I have not pre-read this article and am curious. From Holly Elliott. When Russia invaded Ukraine, it was widely believed to have expected an easy victory over its neighbor. But so far, Russia has little to show for what it's called a special military operation. Its forces have been bogged down in fighting mainly to the northern and eastern and southern fringes of Ukraine, and have found the country to be much more organized and well-equipped than they expected. Russian forces have seized only one city, Kherson, but even that occupation looks shaky. I think it's to 2 at this point. Because I think they got Mariupol at this point. With Ukrainian forces launching a counteroffensive to retake the southern port. Similar moves have been seen elsewhere in Ukraine, with officials claiming that forces are mounting an increasing number of counterattacks. Just over a month into the war, Moscow is facing unintended consequences of its aggression, ranging from high casualties among its troops to economic ruin for years to come. Here are 5 of them. Russian casualties are high. Russia's been coy about releasing statistics on its losses, but one Russian Defense Ministry official said on Friday that 1,351 Russian soldiers had died in the war so far, that 325 were injured. Ukraine's authorities claim that more than 15,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in conflict, while a senior NATO official last week estimated that between 8,000 and 15,000 have been killed. Honestly, for as small as the conflict is, I would be much, much more apt to believe the first number. But that's just me. It's a small country. If accurate, those numbers would be a heavy death toll for Russia, comparable to the almost 15,000 Soviet soldiers who died during the 10-year war in Afghanistan in the 80s. To this day, that incursion is unpopular in Russia because it gained the country little but cost so much blood. So that's what we see off of that. 2. Ukrainians now loathe Russia. One of the most likely consequences of this war is that many Ukrainians will harbor an abiding animosity towards Russia, particularly after the bombing of homes and civilian infrastructure, including a children's hospital and maternity ward in Mariupol. Yeah, I still need some verification of that because I'm already hearing dissent among whether or not that was the truth. As well as a theater where families were seeking shelter. These are widely seen as war crimes by the international community. Russia claims it has not targeted civilians. 3. Economic ruin. The international community was accused of being slow and ineffective when Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. This time it upped the ante with Russia's full-scale When Russia's full-scale invasion began, the Western democracies imposing wide-ranging sanctions on the key Russian sectors, businesses, and individuals connected to the Kremlin who support the invasion. As a result, Russian economy is expected to fall into a deep recession this year. The Institute of International Finance predicts Russia's economy will contract it by as much as 15% in 2020 because of the war. It also predicted a decline of 3% in 2023 and warned in a note last week that the war will wipe out 15 years of economic growth. All things to watch for, all things that are important, all things to be concerned with. 4. Europe is dropping Russian energy. I have yet to see any actual proof of that. It looks like they're still using Russian energy, they're just using less Russian energy. And 5. Russia has united the West. Also not true. So, thank you for 3 truths and 2 lies. CNBC. From NBC, Biden, Singapore's Prime Minister, to discuss Ukraine, Indo-Pacific security. Trade, climate change, and global COVID response are also on the agenda for the White House meeting, a senior admin official said. President Biden will welcome Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong to the White House for bilateral meetings on Tuesday to discuss Russia's invasion of Ukraine, maintaining peace in the Indo-Pacific region, climate change, and supply chain issues. The President and Prime Minister, Lee, will be meeting at a very critical time, one in which the rules-based international order faces unprecedented challenges. A senior Biden admin official told reporters on Monday in a preview of the visit. The official added, "I think it's obviously shaped by Russia's unprovoked and unjustifiable war, honk honk, against Ukraine, which poses an urgent threat not only for Europe, but also for the Indo-Pacific." And again, that's something to watch for as well, because now that we're seeing weakness on the world stage from this leader, we look at Taiwan, we look at some of the other major industrial centers, south of China. Now, people keep telling me China would be stupid to come back out and do this, but why would they? Why would they be stupid? It's just been shown that war is completely unpopular with the American people. And while this would be a very, very hard offensive for China to go back and launch, they'll still sit back and try to goad the U.S. into coming back in and doing some of this stuff. And the Indo-Pacific is probably looking at this wondering, are we next? So that's what we see off of that, and that's where we go with that. From the New York Post. Ukrainian city of Mariupol in the hands of the occupiers, according to the mayor, from Evan Simko Bednarski. Russian forces are in control of large swaths of Mariupol after weeks of siege and bombardment, the city's mayor said on Monday. Not everything is in our power, Mayor Vadim Boychenko told CNN on Monday. Unfortunately, we are in the hands of occupiers today. Boychenko said fewer than half the city's peacetime residents remain. According to estimates, about 160,000 people are in besieged city of Mariupol, where it is impossible to live because there is no water, no electricity, no heat, and no connection, he said, and it is really scary. The apparent loss of Mariupol comes after nearly a month of heavy bombardment and days of fierce street fighting. The southern port city on the coast of the Sea of Azov has been the target of the Russian ambitions since the start of the invasion last month, part of an effort to connect Russian forces in Crimea with forces in the separatist Donbas region to create one signal front in the Ukraine south. In the process, the Kremlin has cut the city off from power, water, and food while shelling it from land and sea. Alina Beskrovna, a Mariupol resident who escaped the city in a convoy of cars and made it to Poland, said that people in the city were melting snow for water and cooking it on open fires despite the risk of bombardment, because if you don't, you'll have nothing to eat. A lot of people, I think, starving to death in apartments right now with no help, she said. It's a mass murder that's happening at the hands of Russians. Russian actions in Mariupol have drawn stern condemnation from the international community. A maternity ward was destroyed by a Russian airstrike in Mariupol earlier this month. So it looks like, yes, Mariupol may have fallen. Possibly not as official as I thought maybe when we talked about the CNBC article, but it looks like it is getting ready. If it's not already fallen, it's on the precipice of doing so. So that's what we see off of that. From CNBC, Ukraine suspends evacuations amid safety fears. Russia and Ukraine prepare for face-to-face talks. So another live blog here, but I archived this into a different point. Face-to-face talks between Ukraine and Russia are set to continue this week, with delegations from both countries traveling to Turkey today. We've covered all that already. Ukrainian counterattacks have pushed Russians back from a number of positions, Britain says. Pushing them back from Kiev, we saw some of that already. Nothing on Mariupol. So let's keep going. This one came into the Discord from Golden Leaf. So let's look at a little bit of this here from The Guardian. Ready to fight, how a Russian uranium ban would threaten Native American tribes. The ban would shift U.S. uranium production into overdrive, posing environmental and spiritual threats to indigenous communities who live near the mines. Sacred Native American sites such as the Grand Canyon and Bears Ears may seem a long way from the devastation unfolding in Ukraine, but as the U.S. mounts a ban on Russian uranium, part of the economic levers to stop Putin's war, indigenous communities living near U.S. mines could pay the price. John Barrasso, a senator from Wyoming, recently introduced a bill that calls for a ban on all forms of uranium imported from Russia. Uranium fuels America's nuclear power plants, and about 20% of that comes from Russia, while close to another 30% is imported from the Russian allies of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Such a ban would shift American uranium production into overdrive. In an editorial in the Casper Star Tribune, Barrasso pointed out that the U.S. has vast uranium resources, including in Wyoming, but 90% of the uranium used in nuclear power plants is imported. Rather than letting our uranium sit in the ground, we ought to use it, he wrote. A longtime advocate of the uranium industry, Barrasso wrote that continuing to buy Russian uranium is funding Putin's killing machine.
Mining companies now stand at the ready, with the possibility to ramp up production at sites near the Grand Canyon, Bears Ears National Monument in Utah, and multiple locations in Barrasso's home state of Wyoming. Many of the operations pose environmental and spiritual threats to indigenous communities who live near the mines and have fought for their existence for decades. Amber Raimondo, the energy director of the not-for-profit Grand Canyon Trust, says the Senate's proposal risks perpetuating environmental injustices on our own soil. If this ban is aimed at saving lives, the answer can't just be to ramp up U.S. uranium production. Raimondo says the answer has to involve truly respecting and listening to communities on the front lines of uranium production, especially in indigenous communities. Otherwise, this is not about protecting human life, it's about protecting profits. So, and that is going to be some of the balance off of this here, because there has been an agreement with the U.S. and many of these tribes. I'm not saying that hoarding all this land is the answer on the tribal side, but I'm also saying that going in and strip mining the hell out of lands that you promised out to the natives is also the answer. It's time to sit down and have a discussion. Can we do a little bit of give and a little bit of take to make life better for you and make life better for us? That is a discussion that needs to be had. And it's something that, again, if we continue to see this, we may start to see in the near future. But yeah, there is a lot of uranium out in the western U.S. And we'll see what happens with that. Here's an interesting one for us. Biden relied on foreign energy companies to fulfill his commitment to supply Europe with LNG. From Tim Pierce. President Biden intends on fulfilling his commitment to supply Europe with liquefied natural gas by negotiating with foreign companies, rather than increasing U.S. production to fill the need. The U.S. and the European Commission released a joint statement on Friday expressing a commitment to reducing Europe's dependency on Russian energy and announcing a new partnership to do so. The U.S., together with our international partners, Biden said at a press conference on Friday, We're going to work to ensure the additional 15 billion cubic meters of liquefied natural gas for Europe this year. And as the EU works to continue buying Russian gas well before 2030, it will also work to ensure additional EU market demand for 50 billion cubic meters of LNG from the US annually by 2030, he added. The Biden admin plans to meet the need, at least in the short term, by relying almost completely on foreign LNG producers to route some of their product to Europe rather than elsewhere, such as in Asia, as Politico reports. U.S. LNG terminals already are near capacity of what they can export, and additional terminals will not be online for another 2 to 5 years, according to the New York Times, a former newspaper. Since taking office, Biden has been more antagonistic towards domestic oil and natural gas production in the U.S. than his predecessor. Well, yes, I mean, of course, do keep in mind that it pollutes less if it comes from another country around the world. That's a known fact. Just ask any of the fact checkers that come out like Snopes and everything. It's totally fine to get LNG from Africa and Europe and the Middle East or wherever the hell else we get it from. But hey, let's not have it in any of our little suburban homes. If we want to try to do it here in Wisconsin, we'll put on the t-shirts, the tank tops that say, "Frack off!" In his first year in office, Biden curbed the energy infrastructure projects and production by shutting down large projects such as the Keystone XL pipeline and suspending oil leases in 1,002 area oil reserves in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Region. The Biden admin has instead committed to U.S. to building out alternative energy sources such as wind and solar. So, a lot of stuff moving with that, a lot of stuff going with that, and yeah, of course. Did you ever expect that he was going to make American jobs by ramping up the LNG production? I didn't. I knew better than that. Alright, some more Russia stuff here. Rogan says that he offered to arrange all of Elon Musk's training to fight Putin. From Zachary Rogers. Comedian, UFC commentator, and podcast giant Joe Rogan said he reached out to SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, offering to help the billionaire train after he challenged Russian President Vladimir Putin to single combat. In the middle of March, Musk took to social media to issue his wager against Putin. He said he would post the fight would be over the fate of Ukraine. Following up on the tweet, Musk writes in another Cyrillic script, this time tagging Russia's official English account for the Kremlin. Do you agree to this fight? Musk's tweet garnered many responses, with some warning the Tesla CEO he was picking an opponent who is stronger than him. Yeah, but it's still funny. I don't think that this is ever going to happen. We're not going to have single combat to go decide the fate of anything else off of this. And if Musk starts winning, the Russian people will just shoot him. But it's still funny. From Reuters, Iran struck Iraq target over gas talks involving Israel, according to officials. A nascent plan for Iraq's Kurdistan region to supply gas to Turkey and Europe with Israeli help is part of what angered Iran into striking Kurdish capital Erbil with ballistic missiles this month, Iraqi and Turkish officials said. The March 13th attack on Erbil comes as a shock to officials throughout the region for its ferocity and was a rare publicly declared assault by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The IRGC said the strike hit Israeli strategic centers in Erbil and was retaliation for Israeli air raid that killed 2 members in Syria. So that is one instance, of course, of Iran and ISIS coming back out here and saying, yes, no, we did this. But another one here coming up out of Israel. Islamic State claims responsibility for attacking Israel that killed 2 police officers, from Monique Beals. The Islamic State had claimed responsibility for an attack that killed 2 police officers in Israel on Sunday. 2 gunmen in Hadera, which is roughly 30 miles north of Tel Aviv, carried out the attack. They were both sympathizers of the Islamic State, Reuters reported, citing security officials. Security footage showed 2 men with assault rifles fired on a main street in Hadera, the news service added. Luckily, our officers managed to neutralize the assailants and prevent a bigger terrorist attack, Eli Levy, a spokesperson for the National Police, said on Israel's Kan television, according to Reuters. The attack came while U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and 3 Arab foreign ministers were in the country for a summit. I wonder if that's what they were going for. Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs Yair Lapid updated the foreign ministers participating in the Negev summit on the details of the terror attack in Hadera, and for the Israeli Foreign Ministry also condemned the attack according to the tweet. All the foreign ministers condemned the attack, and we asked to send their condolences to the families and victims and wishes for the recovery of the wounded, the ministry added in a tweet. So, interesting, of course, the fact that Blinken was over in Israel when all this happened, but, the other question is, first and foremost, the Islamic State is jump right up on the ball and say, no, that was us, we did it, that was us, right here. Be afraid, be very afraid, Western devils. But then, as we move on, as we go on to this even further, now we look at the fact of, you go back and you remember the last few years and you say, wasn't it funny that for 3 years we didn't have to hear the words ISIS claimed credit? From CNN, some Ketanji Brown Jackson news. Romney says he hasn't reached a decision yet on Ketanji Brown Jackson nomination. From Claire Ferran and Casey Hunt. Let's listen.
West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin says he's a yes for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation, which basically guarantees she will be confirmed. You sat down with an exclusive interview with Republican Senator Mitt Romney from Utah on his vote for your new CNN Plus show. CNN Plus is our new streaming service. It launches at midnight Eastern this evening. Let's take a quick look.
What was behind your colleagues and the way that they questioned her?
Well, some colleagues, my side of the aisle, I thought, asked respectful questions and were able to elicit responses from her that I think were very helpful to those that are making an evaluation. I thought some were preparing for their presidential campaign and were, if you will, doing the things you have to do to get on TV. Which I think is unfortunate. I think any setting like this that doesn't show respect for the witness, or in this case the judge, is not the right way for us to go. We should show, in my opinion, more respect for one another. So sometimes the rhetoric was a little hot. But I think in the final analysis, we'll each be able to make our decision based upon our personal interviews with Judge Jackson and with the results that come from these hearings.
Have you made up your mind about how you're going to vote? I know you voted against her confirmation to her current post.
Yeah, I have begun a deeper dive, a much deeper dive than I had during the prior evaluation. And in this case as well, she's gone into much more depth, talking about her judicial philosophy than she had before. And we're, of course, looking at her judicial record as a district judge and as an appellate judge in far more depth than we had before. So.
And, I mean, you kind of knew that Romney was going to weasel his way out of everything off of this as well, especially now talking to CNN. Getting ready to go for CNN Plus, but he's going to do whatever the political winds tell him to do. He's always been that way, and he's always going to be that way. A little bit more on Romney. Romney planning a much deeper dive on Jackson after opposing her for appeals court. And that is interesting as well, the fact that, you know, he is coming up here. He's, oddly enough, for Mitt Romney, being somewhat consistent. I know, I'm as shocked as you are. From Olifimihan Ocean. Senator Mitt Romney said that he's planning a much deeper dive into Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson after he opposed nomination to the D.C. Appeals Court. I've begun a deeper dive, a much deeper dive than I had during the prior evaluation, Romney said on The Source with Casey Hunt on CNN+. In this case, as well, she's gone into much more depth talking about her judicial philosophy than she had before, and we're, of course, looking at her judicial record as a district judge and an appellate judge in far more depth than we had before. When asked about the tone and tenor of Jackson's hearing and how his Republican colleagues questioned her record, Romney said that he thought some of them asked respectable questions to Jackson. So he doesn't know what he's going to do because his focus groups haven't told him what he's going to do yet. And I'm sure some of them are coming back out and saying, you can't vote as a Republican. You can't be a Republican anymore if you vote yes for this woman. And some of them are telling him, well, the Orange Man was bad and she opposed the Orange Man's agenda, so you have to vote for her. But it's all going to come down, in the end, to what is going to give Mitt Romney the most political clout, as everything else that Mitt Romney does is going to do for him. It doesn't matter what's right. It doesn't matter what he actually believes. It's all about what's going to give Mitt Romney the most power. From Fox News, Florida's DeSantis signed parental rights and education bill hits back at Hollywood critics. And, you know, as we were getting started, as I was doing the show prep here, I was also reading onto a thread from a guy who keeps telling you that, well, this means that any teacher who hangs up a picture of a student crew of his family with two daddies is going to get sued. And the panic begins. From Jessica Chasmar, and this is kind of a tale of two stories too, so we're going to read a touch off of ABC on the same thing. This is from Jessica Chasmar. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law Monday the parental rights bill that bans teachers from giving classroom instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity in kindergarten through third grade. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed, I already read that paragraph. In Florida, we not only know that parents have the right to be involved, we insist that parents have the right to be involved, DeSantis said at a press conference at the Classical Preparatory School in Spring Hill, Florida. excuse me. The Parental Rights and Education Bill, which passed the Republican-controlled state legislature this month, has been dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill by Democrats who misleadingly claim it bans any discussion pertaining to being gay in Florida schools. Just like the dumb fucking touch between that decided that he knew better than everybody else on Twitter this morning. The bill was mocked at the Oscars Sunday night, with the co-hosts Wanda Sykes, Amy Schumer, and Regina Hall repeating the word gay as the crowd applauded. I had thought about this a little while ago, and I came to realize, as I was thinking about this, that the only people who have actually, because I've read the bill, I know what's in the bill, the only people that have actually banned you using the word gay are Democrats who decide to go back up and put on their social media, "My sexuality is not your insult." They're the only ones who are banning anybody from saying gay, and I think that's kind of gay. But yes, this is going to continue to go, and, again, now, as far as this goes with this law in place, are there going to be parents who find out about some little kid in their school who put up the picture of "my two daddies" in kindergarten, and the teacher hung it up and sue a teacher? Probably. Are they going to get laughed out of court over it? Probably. Unless they go extremely judge shopping to go out and try to pull somebody who's got really, really shallow pockets, but try to put that person out of there. And of course, on this is absent from much of the discussion around the bill are the actual contents of the legislation, which many of these people have not read. But ABC decides to tell you a different story. Florida governor signs controversial "Don't Say Gay" bill into law. From Kiera Alfonseca. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Parental Rights and Education bill, dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill by critics. The bill bans classroom instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity in kindergarten through 3rd grade, and states that any instruction on these topics cannot occur in a manner that's not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with the state standards according to the legislation HB 1557. "We will make sure the parents can send their kids to school to get an education, not an indoctrination," DeSantis said before signing the bill on Monday. The legislation states that Florida Department of Education would have to update standards in accordance with the requirements. Under this bill, parents can also decline any mental, emotional, and physical health services available to their children in school, and schools will be required to notify parents of their child's use of school health services unless there's reason to believe that disclosure would subject the student to abuse, abandonment, or neglect. Parents could sue the school district if they believe there's a violation of any of these requirements or restrictions. The bill is expected to go into effect on July 1st. So, and I mean, this is an example of the kind of rhetoric that's being out there that they're telling all these people. "Oh, well, this is just them trying to ban any sort of discussion because they want to ban gayness." Legally, according to the bill, they actually can't have a classroom discussion on straight marriage either, or what goes there. Like, "Oh, daddy puts this into mommy and it feels really good." They can't have that discussion either. But again, the foot soldiers on the Twitter side have been indoctrinated to go back and tell you what you're supposed to think about this bill, and if you don't, you're an evil GQPer. Alright. Some tweets. Some stuff to talk about here. Gordon Lubel says, "Leon Panetta says on CNN that Biden's gaffe in Europe about regime change came about because Biden is Irish, and his instinct to internalize human suffering may have overwhelmed him to the point where he was not careful about what he said. Biden needs more discipline," Panetta says. Circle those wagons. Circle those wagons as fast as you can. Biden started talking about regime change, and now we have to make sure that it doesn't sound like he's talking about regime change. Otherwise, the leftoids will get off of this war. Ducey got into it with Biden over some of the things that he said, talking about the regime change especially, but many other things going on here. Let's listen to what that sounded like. Tim Pool putting this video back out here saying, "Oh man, we're fucked." But he won't say that on his channel. I'll say that we're fucked on my channel. That's why I'm better than Tim Pool.
Are you worried that other leaders in the world are going to start to doubt that America is back if some of these big things that you say on the world stage keep getting walked back?
What's getting walked back?
It made it sound like, just in the last couple days, it sounded like you told U.S. troops they were going to Ukraine. It sounded like you said it was possible the U.S. would use a chemical weapon, and it sounded like you were calling for regime change in Russia, and we know...
None of the three occurred.
None of the three occurred?
None of the three.
Mr. President?
You interpret the language that way. I was talking to the troops. We were talking about helping train the troops that are the Ukrainian troops that are in Poland. That's what the context. I sat there with those guys for a couple hours. That's what we talked about.
So when you said you're going to see when you're there, you were not intending to
I was
say
referring to meeting with and talking with the Ukrainian troops that were in Poland.
And when you said a chemical weapon use by Russia would trigger a response in kind.
It will trigger a significant response.
What does that mean?
I'm not going to tell you. Why would I tell you? You got to be silly.
The world wants to know.
The world wants to know a lot of things. I'm not telling them what the response would be. Then Russia knows the response.
So, yeah, we're fucked. Tim Pool is right on that one. All right, what else do we have? Not much more. I don't know if we're going to get through everything, but we've got a few more. Biden, of course, the Daily Wire has to come back and say, none of the three occurred. Biden denies making foreign policy gaffes that the White House has walked back. In spite of the fact that there's documentation everywhere, and many of the people are on record saying, "No, you didn't say that, you didn't mean that, stop looking over here." Joe Biden appeared unaware that his surrogates had spent a fair amount of time cleaning up or walking back things that he said while in Europe. But yeah, I'm sure that they didn't come back and tell him that. To bolster allies and discuss the next moves with regards to Ukraine. Biden, who appeared to tell the troops they were headed to Ukraine, suggested that the U.S. might retaliate with chemical weapons if Russia used one first, and alluded the possibility of regime change in Russia, told Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy that those things didn't happen. So, yeah, I mean, he doesn't get told half the shit that goes on over there. Another one from Fox. This was funny. CNN analyst blames Trump for aftermath of Will Smith, Chris Rock, Oscars incident. Because, of course, it's all Trump's fault. From Brian Flood. A CNN analyst appeared to blame the chaotic scene that occurred after Will Smith slapped Chris Rock during the 94th Annual Academy Awards on none other than longtime CNN nemesis, former President Trump. During the Oscars on Sunday night, Smith charged at the stage and smacked Rock in the face after the comedian made a joke about King Richard actor's wife. The incident stunned the crowd, but the show went on, and Smith eventually won the coveted Best Actor award. CNN's Asha Rangappa decided the Dolby Theater crowd stuck around because of Trump. So, did anyone walk out after that happened, or are we getting an independent psychological case study on how Trump got normalized? Rangappa asked on Twitter. Rent-free in their heads, Rangappa was swiftly mocked for blaming Trump on for the incident. Good. CNN famously drifted away from its once nonpartisan style to an anti-Trump liberal network under former boss Jeff Zucker, who was forced to step down earlier this year. Incoming boss Chris Licht is expected to attempt to steer the network back towards the just-the-facts approach to the news that founder Ted Turner intended. Rangappa, who is one of the network's more outspoken liberals on social media, was mocked last year for comparing a Southwest pilot who objected to President Biden to an ISIS sympathizer. I remember that. A pilot on a Southwest flight from Houston to Albuquerque signed off his announcement for passengers by saying, "And let's go, Brandon," according to the Associated Press journalist who was reportedly on the flight. Yeah, this seems like a very hinged individual, don't you think? Why did Will Smith get up and hit Chris Rock in the face? It's Trump's fault. From Politico. I might say this one, because... No, let's just go into this a little bit here. Trump likely committed felony obstruction, federal judge rules. From Kyle Cheney, Josh Gerstein, and Nicholas Wu. The federal judge ruled Monday that former President Trump, more likely than not, attempted to illegally obstruct Congress as part of the criminal conspiracy when he tried to subvert the 2020 election on January 6 of 2021. Based on the evidence, the court finds it more likely than not that President Trump corruptly attempted to obstruct the joint session of Congress on January 6 of 2021. U.S. District Court David Carter wrote. Oh, do tell. Slavic Lives Matter, by the way, is the good chance. Just remember, Slavic Lives Matter. Carter's sweeping historic ruling came as he ordered the release of the House's January 6 committee of 101 emails from Trump ally John Eastman rejecting Eastman's effort to shield them via attorney-client privilege. Well, yes, of course, because all rights are suspended when it comes down to the orange man has to be evil and bad. Eastman used the email account of his former employer, Chapman University, to discuss a political and legal strategy related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and had sued the select committee to prevent them from obtaining the emails from the school. Carter, who sits on the federal court in California, said that the plan Eastman had developed was obviously illegal, and Trump knew that at the time, but he pushed forward with an effort that he says would have effectively ended American democracy. If Dr. Eastman and President Trump's plan had worked, it would have permanently ended the peaceful transition of power, undermining American democracy and the Constitution, Carter wrote. If the country does not commit to investigating, pursuing accountability for those responsible, the court fears January 6 will repeat itself. The remarkable ruling may be the first in history in which a federal judge determined a president while in office appeared to commit a crime. The decision has no direct role on whether Trump will be charged criminally, but could increase pressure on the Justice Department and its Chief Attorney General Merrick Garland to conduct an aggressive investigation that could lead to such charges. And that's the important part right there. That's not a ruling, that's an opinion. But Politico is still going to try to tell you that this is a ruling. He ruled on this. He didn't rule shit on this. His ruling, of course, is that Eastman's letters could be released, which is, by the way, I believe, against the law in California for attorney-client privilege laws. But furthermore, even just the wording into this article tells me that there's absolutely nothing here that this is Eastman blowing off steam and saying, hey, if we just do this, just do this one weird trick, Trump could still be president. And I've yet to see any evidence that Trump responded back at this point and said, okay, yes, we're going to do this. I'm going to fire up a crowd. I'm going to send a crowd of people in there. They're going to stop Mike Pence because Mike Pence is evil and he's the worst, okay? But again, another thing to drum up people and say, January 6th! Oh my God! From the Hill. New York City to crack down on homeless encampments. From Brad Dress. Eric Adams said he plans to start clearing out the homeless encampments in the city. In an interview with the New York Times published on Friday, Adams said he was seeking to clear out the encampments within a 2-week period, but he did not say when. We're going to get rid of the encampments off our streets, and we're going to place people in healthy living conditions with wraparound services, Adams told the Times. Last month, Adams banned people from sleeping or sheltering in the subway system following attacks on the city stations. Adams, who assumed office this year, said that most homeless people are not dangerous, but he didn't want fear to become reality. We're not going to live in fear and frustration, he said. We have to dam every river if we're going to address the issue. Breaking news, the populations of San Francisco and Los Angeles, especially in the homeless sectors, just went up. The city had more than 2,300 unsheltered homeless people as of January 2021, according to the most recent annual point-in-time estimate. The Times referred to a city webpage that defines an encampment as a structure to live under, including mattresses, tarps, and tents, and noted that New York City does not have a large homeless encampments like the tent cities seen on the West Coast, where hundreds of people live in a site. This comes after LA banned camping in 54 locations in October, and Portland, Oregon Mayor Ted Wheeler used his emergency powers to begin ban camping on certain roadways last month, the Associated Press reported. So a little bit of a change of what's going on here with New York, and possibly something that could see New York come back and thrive again. Get the people into the shelter, get the people into the mental hospital, especially if they need the mental services. But don't just let them sit out on the street and do their thing. From the Blaze. Boston will restrict demonstrations after anti-mandate protesters target the mayor and the mother of city councilmen. From Carlos Garcia. Local lawmakers in Boston are seeking restrictions on political demonstrations after anti-mandate protesters harassed the mother of a city councilman and protested outside the home of the mayor. Dude, don't go to their homes. Go to the public buildings. If you go to their homes, you're likely to get shot. City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo said that the anti-mandate protesters accidentally harassed his mother when they were seeking to protest outside of his home instead. See? City Hall is open and they can protest there. It's clear the goal isn't protest but targeted harassment, and it's wrong, Arroyo tweeted with a photograph of the protesters. Cruel and disgusting. Leave our moms, families, and neighbors out of it, responded Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. Wu had previously claimed the protesters were keeping up her neighbors, including 96-year-old veteran and many families with children. To have a chance at healing and building communities, we can't keep normalizing hate, Wu tweeted in January. They've shouted on megaphones that my kids will grow up without a mom because I'll be in prison. Yesterday at dinner, my son asked who else's birthday it was because the AM chant was, "Happy birthday, Hitler." In response to these kinds of incidences, Boston officials will vote on proposals to restrict protests at residence of public officials to the hours from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. And again, I say this when the rightoids do it, I say this when the leftoids do it. Why are we going to people's homes? There's a public building where most of these people spend a lot of their time. And again, like Wu said, you are violating the NAP when you go out to their homes. You absolutely are. Especially with uninvolved persons around the people. People who are just trying to get to their 9 to 5. People who are just going out there to try to, the 96-year-old veteran. People who are trying to keep their kids down. The person's mother, who as far as I know is completely uninvolved. You're terrifying, what was it, McConnell's wife, was it? When they tried to bust down the door in McConnell's house? I'm sympathetic to trying to get your point across, I really am. And some of this is for your safety too, because a lot of these people have private security. And once you go in and try to go back out and actually physically harm people, you're liable to have the authorities or the private security brought down on you. You could get killed for going back and protesting at the home. You're usually not going to get killed if you do it on the Capitol. Although you are fish in a barrel, I'll give you that. If the government decides to crack down, you're very much fish in a barrel at that point, but it's usually not going to happen because they can't take the optics of doing something like that. So that's what we're seeing coming up out of Boston. I don't like the fact that the government has to make the law for that. I would feel like that would be common human decency, but apparently that has gone out the window on both sides of the aisle at this point. All right. And the last one here that I got from Forbes right before we got off of here. Forbes decided to tell you how to feel about Will Smith and said, while talking about Will Smith's behavior, don't forget to also talk about the system that helped create it. From Maya Nigel Hoskin. Everyone is still talking about last night's Oscars when Academy Award winner and director Will Smith slapped an award-winning stand-up comedian, writer and producer, and director Chris Rock after Rock made a distasteful joke about Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. Of course, social media immediately exploded and people began dishing out their opinions and providing theories about the slap heard around the world. It was faked. Various conspiracy theories, conspiracy theories, have run the gamut from the incident being staged for ratings to being staged to emasculate black men further. No, I'm pretty sure it was staged for a distraction against what Biden said in Warsaw 24 hours prior. But perhaps the larger question should be asked is why blacks in Hollywood have been routinely expected to grin and bear embarrassment and degradation without expressing any discontent or risk of being viewed as angry. Furthermore, why is it permissible for a black woman's health condition to be made content for a cheap few laughs at an award show? And how will this incident overshadow the hard work of Will Packer, the black man who produced the award show, along with an all-black team for the first time in history? While hosting last night's Oscars award ceremony, Chris Rock said, "Jada, I love you! G.I. Jane too, can't wait to see you!" in reference to Pinkett Smith's bald head. Will Smith then emerged from the crowd, after laughing about the joke, and served Rock with a fresh, open hand slap in response. What might seem to have been an innocent joke was highly personal and hit a chord for Smith. Jada is not rocking a bald head to be on trend or to appear avant-garde. She's currently has short hair due to her alopecia. In an interesting twist of fate, Smith won Best Actor for his role in King Richard. Just minutes after the altercation, during his acceptance speech, Smith said, "In this time, in this moment, I'm overwhelmed by what God is calling me to do, to be in this world. Making this film, I got to protect Anjan Ellis, who was one of the most strongest, most delicate people I ever met. I got to protect Sanaya and Demi, the two actresses that played Venus and Serena. I'm being called on in my life to love people, protect people, and to be a river for my people." Dude. First off, why do the rest of us have to come back and grin and bear it when we see more personalized attacks, more generalized attacks, and yes, attacks on health conditions? This goes both ways. I don't know. I'm looking at this and I'm saying this is still staged. I saw Will Smith laughing. I saw him getting into it, getting into the routine. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it was either because Pinkett went up there and told him to go do it, or again because they were planning to do ratings, or as Mr. Zed had said, they'd practiced this routine 3 times the night before. I don't know, but all I know is there seems to be a lot of stuff here. Other than what's been presented to us here, and this has been another way to say, it's the white man's fault for what happened here. Alright, let's do Twitter trending and head out of here for the day. So as we always do at the end of the Tuesday shows, we look in at the top 5 Twitter trends of the day as what's going on right now. So let's get into the Explore page. Let's see what the trending page says. We will skip the Tuesday vibe, Tuesday feelings, Tuesday everything else that goes along with this, and actually look at the actual trends. So, spring of 2023. This, I believe, is has to do with I forget the name of the show, but The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild sequel delayed to spring of 2023. Legend of Zelda series producer Ijai Aonuma has an update to share about the launch of the timing of the sequel, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Please take a look. I guess let's listen.
こんにちは。ゼルダの伝説シリーズプロデューサーの青沼です。ゼルダの伝説ブレスオブザワイルド続編の発売時期に関してお知らせがあります。本作は2022年に発売を予定しているとお伝えしていましたが、開発にもう少しお時間をいただきたく、発売を2023年春に変更させていただきたいと思います。楽しみにお待ちいただいている皆様、大変申し訳ありません。続編の舞台は前作ブレスオブザワイルドでの地上フィールドだけでなく、空の上にも広がると前回お伝えしましたが、拡張された世界はそれだけではなく、そこで皆さんを待ち受ける新たな出会いや新たな遊びも前作以上に多彩なものとなっています。そうした
So with that, yeah, it looks like we are going to be seeing that move back to 2023. I still haven't played the original yet because I don't have a Switch. I'd like to. I'm interested in it. I would like to actually play all the Zelda games, but I haven't played anything since Twilight Princess, and I've even barely scratched the surface in Twilight Princess. So that would be something to look forward to, something I would definitely enjoy. But you know, it's at the point where when do you have time? Maybe I could get a capture card and play Twilight Princess on stream. I don't know. I think you guys would enjoy that. I could probably make that happen. I know I've looked at capture cards before. But yeah, unfortunately I don't have a console that's any newer than the PS2 and the GameCube. But I can set up the GameCube to play on this computer. I think that'd be fun. I'm going to look into that. We might do that. Well, we still got to finish Fallout 4 and Fallout 3 because I got that to work finally again. But that's what we see up with that. The next trend, Wordle 283X. People tried to guess today's 5-letter word in 6 tries or fewer in Brain Teaser Wordle. Looks like Carol Markowitz failed. Melody failed. Angel of Light failed. Christopher Reed failed. And they're all failing on different letters too, by the way. Fail, 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 fail. Melt Like Butter rather, got it. Z Phoenix 94 failed. I don't know. Did Arvold get it, I wonder? Alright. Burner! Breaking CBS News and the Washington Post that obtained White House records turned over to the House, which show a gap in President Trump's phone logs of 7 hours and 37 minutes on January 6th. Senator Schultz says maybe he was watching TV, not on the phone. Maybe he didn't talk on the phone. I go days without talking on the phone. Trump said, I have no idea what a burner phone is. So that'll be up on the show for tomorrow morning. In fact, let's actually cue that up for tomorrow morning, so we can make sure that we talk about this because, oh yes, we're going to go about January 6th. Mick Mulvaney. Mick Mulvaney has been hired by CBS. We'll throw that on the schedule for tomorrow too. I'm not sure who Mick Mulvaney is. I've heard the name before, but I don't know who it is. Mick Mulvaney was part of the criminal gang that tried to extort Ukraine and then cover it up in 2019. Now, as Ukraine fights for its survival, CBS News has hired Mulvaney as a contributor. What an insult to both U.S. news consumers and the Ukraine. So I'm guessing he was somebody in the Trump White House. And they can't stand the fact that he's now going to still have a career and still get paid. Cool. And the last one that we'll do today is PlayStation Plus. Sony has finally revealed an all-new PlayStation Plus that brings together the existing PS Plus and PS Now into a 3-tier subscription service that includes access to retro games, according to IGN. Oh, that'd be interesting to see. Again, I don't have a console of PlayStation, so... Well, I've got the PS2, but I don't have a new enough console that I can do anything like this, but... You know, everybody's got to go to a subscription service rather than actually having physical media, so... I mean, why wouldn't the video games be the same? And I suggested that GameStop do something like this at some point. Get a subscription service like that when they were, you know, getting all this money coming in from people investing in them because they had no idea what investing was. While still sticking to the hedge fund managers. So, I don't know. I'd have to try it out to see how it went, but I would have to buy a console that I can't afford first. So, we'll see what happens with that. And with that, that's going to be all of our trends for the day. We're going to head out of here. So let's get some outro music and let's go. So thanks everybody who came by and hung out with us in live chat, kept us on point, kept us going here. I saw a lot of good comments off of that. I see that Sully Blue loves The Legend of Zelda, so we might have to make that stream happen here. But first we got to go back and finish Fallout 4, or maybe not, because, you know, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours that go into that. But come back here, join us here tomorrow for more Contemporary, as we're talking apparently about January 6th again, because Mick Mulvaney and Trump's burner phone. So definitely go back. That's going to be an interesting time. We're going to see some stuff about that. I'm going to talk about a few of these things in Discord servers, including our own and Gilded servers as well. So join both of those. Come back and hang out with us, and we will see you back here tomorrow with more Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.